faces dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's Friday. It's February 7th. It's a busy, busy Friday, too. Everything wanted to go haywire after we left you a little early yesterday. It was great to catch up with Stephen Glass, with Lawrence Wyke, with a couple new faces for Atlanta United 2 as well. You'll be getting an Atlanta United 2 season preview coming up here probably next week on the SDH network. But thanks to everybody, Chris, Johannes, Maria with Atlanta United 2, to make that happen yesterday. It was a good start to their preseason. Atlanta United's first team continues preseason in Birmingham tomorrow. I'm still under the impression that there is a stream coming from the Birmingham Legion on this. It's their match. It's their home match. So they're in charge of that side of it. We will have a radio call on 92.9 The Game starting at 4 o'clock Eastern with pregame coverage. Kickoff is around 4:30, and we'll have an hour of the full-time report following the match to talk all about everything that happens between Atlanta and Birmingham Legion. I think it's front page news in Birmingham today. It's definitely being talked about in a big way because this match is sold out. And it's a lot of soccer excitement in Central Alabama heading into tomorrow.
Absolutely looking forward to it, having games to talk about, going to see the guys that we've seen in practice, seen on the quick videos and social media. For me, I also want to see, I know it's still early, but I want to see how Birmingham is looking in their new season with some of their player additions. So it's going to be a fun one. The weather forecast from staff meteorologist Mike Conti has improved as the week has gone on. So right now it's looking like
it's snowing.
Yeah.
It's snowing. There's snow falling.
Yes, there is snow falling.
People are freaking out, man.
They are. Get your bread, get your milk.
About it.
Get your lots of pictures too. Get your orange juice, get your water. Flurries. Yeah, and it's on car windshields across Alabama and Georgia. So, give me the. Holy cow! Thank you, Harry. That's about right.
I'm freaked out by this. Is it going to be safe?
Define safe, sir.
Well, I mean, is there going to be ice on the roads and stuff?
I would hope that with the rotation of the Earth as it gets closer to the sun as the day goes on, the answer to that would be a no.
Okay, that's good.
Hey, because, look, the boss and I are heading over there this afternoon, so at least we ought to be able to clear you a path.
Yes, please. Clear a path with the snow dogs and leave some snowshoes around the state line just in case it's needed, because there's been snow flurries sighted.
We'll rent some Malamutes and make sure that we can get out I-20 and get there in one piece.
It just always cracks me up. I'm sure that bread and milk is already completely sold out at local grocery stores.
Yeah, I'm sure that they've gone wall to wall with breaking wind this morning for all of the Birmingham morning.
What did you say?
There are two kinds of news, sir.
Wait a minute, you said wall to wall with breaking wind?
Yeah, that's what I've always referred to as when weather turns into your breaking news. You have breaking news, and then the weather version of breaking news to me is always referred to as breaking wind.
I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah, breaking news and breaking wind.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna. Oh man. All right, what a start.
File
to the
that
show.
one away.
Yeah, I'm gonna be careful where I do that one. Okay.
Yeah. Let's make sure that you're not near any gut bombs or anything like that.
Seriously,
so if you had gut bombs and snowflakes, that's a dangerous combination. But yeah, breaking news and breaking wind.
Breaking wind, and it's all out of control. All right, let's get into some real stuff.
Sure.
Well, let's take the shorter one first, because there's really not a ton to dig into with Jay Berhalter resigning from the U.S. Soccer Federation. I would say it's a surprise. I'm not surprised at this point with the things that were starting to come out that Jay Berhalter was not going to become the U.S. Soccer CEO. And
Right.
I don't know how seriously he was considered. According to reports at the time, reports now, Dan Flynn, who stepped down as the CEO, retired from the CEO position, he'll be involved in the World Cup 2026 organization. Flynn wanted Berhalter to get the job. Flynn is who brought Jay Berhalter, into U.S. Soccer in 2000. So that was, I guess, his recommendation. And this is going back a ways because Flynn had kind of an extended process after he had announced that he was leaving the organization. So that happened. Obviously, there was massive freaking out, as there should have been, because of the identity of U.S. men's national team's coach, Greg Berhalter, brother of Jay. That's a little awkward. Then also, last summer, there was an anonymous report, or anonymous reports, and it was written about in the New York Times and other places, about the toxic nature of U.S. soccer at that time. And lots of insinuation about the mismanagement, poor management, however you want to put it, of Flynn and Berhalter. The New York Times categorized the reviewers on Open Door, which was anonymous reviews of the workplace, as having, quote, open disdain for Flynn and Berhalter. So the timeline after that, Carlos Cordero said that they were looking for new candidates. They weren't happy with the candidates that they had. He gave a presentation to the U.S. Soccer Board of Directors on December 6th, and a good portion of the 3-hour session was spent addressing workplace issues. That followed an engagement survey on workplace conditions, which directly resulted from those Glassdoor reviews. It was conducted by the Leadership Research Institute, and according to Cordero, quote, some pretty telling stories came out of this, unquote. I think at that point, it was pretty clear that put the Greg Berhalter coaching thing to the side, which is a big thing to put to the side, but let's push that to the side for a second. If he was not the brother of the U.S. men's national team coach, I think at this stage it was clear he was not going to become the CEO. It was never going to happen at this stage. So he is resigning. He did not say what he would be doing next. I am sure he will have a job somewhere in soccer. That's what he's done since starting with the 1994 World Cup as a volunteer. It would not surprise me at all if he ends up becoming part of the World Cup 2026 organization, considering the relationship with Dan Flynn. So U.S. soccer's getting the right outcome here. It's not going to create even the appearance of a conflict of interest with Jay Berhalter as the CEO and Greg Berhalter as the U.S. men's national team head coach. I don't know if initially they were going to get here. I think they were by the time those reviews came out. I think that started the train that wasn't going to stop and was not going to allow Jay Berhalter to become the CEO. This feels like the best thing for all parties involved.
In all of the postmortems that I've read since this news came out yesterday, and this might be a challenging question to answer across the board, but all of the survey was mentioned, the 3-hour meeting was mentioned, the ticket prices versus attendance was mentioned. What can Jay Berhalter be given credit for in his time with U.S. soccer? I saw nothing in any of the postmortems yesterday about
Whoa. That's completely unfair. Look at where U.S. soccer was in 2000. Go back. It was a tiny organization that had little revenue, that didn't really do a whole lot. Let's be real. The bad workplace is a huge issue. Don't get me wrong, but U.S. soccer is unrecognizable at this stage from what it was when Berhalter and Flynn got together in 2000 and started. That's a fact. I mean, this has been the story of U.S. soccer over the years. You can be irritated with workplace. You can be irritated with the appearance of nepotism. You can be irritated with all of that. That's completely understandable. But it's not fair to say that he didn't do anything, because look at the revenues, look at the reserves, look at the money. I mean, flat out, like, money, you have to make money. The Federation over the years, and you can go all the way back to the start of major professional soccer in the late 60s, the Federation at that time was basically like run by a group of volunteers. There might have been a couple part-time people who throw some hours together to do some admin work. Then they got a bunch of money, and then they squandered it and didn't do very well in managing it. Then they got some more money in the 70s with NASL growing, and then they squandered it and didn't really know what to do with it. And then you got into the 80s, and you could barely get the national team together to actually train and play games. And, somehow you got the World Cup awarded to you in 1988, and you go into 1994, and that changed everything. But not immediately, because even after that, the Federation, and honestly, today, and this is where you're going to point a finger and say that you haven't done anything, it's still run out of a house. It's a very nice house. It's an old, historic house, but it's still a freaking house. And that affects how it feels. It doesn't feel like a national soccer federation in one of the biggest countries in the world. It still kind of feels like a small-time, volunteer-driven organization, and that's probably why you've had some of these workplace issues, and that's probably why some people maybe haven't wanted to give up the power that they've had, because it's been a lot of power. But there has been progress. That's undeniable, and no matter how you feel about anonymous workplace reviews and the Berhalter hire for coach and that stuff, you can't say he hasn't done anything. That's completely unfair.
And that's why I was asking, because like I said, every postmortem focused on the last, say, year.
I don't know which ones you've been reading, because there's been many that have been pretty clear in saying, look, the financial situation for the Federation is night and day. Completely and utterly night and day from what it was. And when you're in charge of the business side, well, you have to get some credit for that. He stepped in and I think was the main hand in organizing the 2016 Copa America Centenario after everybody who initially started to organize it was arrested or indicted. There's that.
Yeah.
But he got that thing done, and that's good. That was a huge revenue source for the Federation. The fact that he couldn't manage people very well, it sounds like, and couldn't manage the organization's culture is what ultimately, kept him from becoming the CEO. More than anything. I think even more so than the fact his brother's the national team coach. But he accomplished quite a bit. It's the same as Sunil Gulati. And look, it's easy to kick Sunil Gulati for an attitude and maybe not handling the whole post Trinidad and Tobago situation well. A lot of people wanted him to immediately resign, and he has alienated people over his time running the Federation, and it's back to the culture thing. You've had people who have taken this organization from being a volunteer-driven organization to being a large business. And when you do that, sometimes people don't actually make that change with it very well. And I think you're seeing that with all of these folks involved. But you can't say because of that they didn't do anything, because they did. Because the Federation's in a completely different place than it was before. Could some of that been happening anyway? Sure. Could some of it be even better than it is now? Sure. But it is a reality. And you can't diminish that completely because of bad attitude and bad other things. It's a reality. It's a fact.
Daniel Price has come in this morning. He says, honestly, not surprised with how Jay is leaving. It appeared that there was internal pressure. No one who worked for him seemed to like working for him. He was on the short list for the next CEO position. It seems when he was told that it wasn't him, he just left.
It's probably a little more complicated than that, but essentially, yeah. I mean, once he wasn't going to get it, why would you stay?
Yeah.
If you're that guy and you've done all of that, and yes, all of that would, and this was something that we said when it all started. Look, if his last name was Smith, his accomplishments would put him as the number one candidate to be the CEO. There's no question about that. The last name does affect that realistic possibility, and then when everything else happened, you can't do it. You can't do it. It's time for the organization to grow up. And U.S. Soccer's got to get this one right, because that's why I mentioned the historical context here. You know, I've been doing a lot of research and studying for some different projects on the beginning of coast-to-coast major professional soccer in the United States. The Federation handled that so incredibly poorly, it would blow your mind. And it really was a big reason why that initial launch in 1967 and 1968 didn't work. Didn't work at all. Well, I wouldn't say it didn't work at all. It planted a lot of seeds, and you had a few teams survive those early days, but it didn't work like it should have. Not when you had the ownership that was involved in those leagues. It was really poorly done by the Federation, resulting in FIFA nearly throwing everybody out. Well, and then it never really changed. And even after the World Cup, I mean, go back and read a little bit about the organization of the 1994 World Cup. FIFA, and I need to make sure some of the details here, but I know there was a presidential change on the Federation side. And the reports were that FIFA was behind it because they were not happy with how the organization of the tournament was coming. And this was around 1990 or so. And that's when Alan Rothenberg rose to power, and that's when things started to change a little bit. But, the Federation having issues being a functioning business and doing what it's supposed to do, these are nothing new. The culture has to change. They have to go to the outside for this position. They have to bring in somebody who's going to have a fresh set of eyes, fresh ideas, and somebody has to come in and change the culture. The organization has to grow up. It should have done it a long time ago. This has to be the impetus for that.
Michael Head is sorry to keep kicking the horse, but he's still bitter on Greg's hire. Very fishy situation, one that would never hold muster in the corporate world. The U.S. Soccer Federation needs a full, deep cleaning to regain the supporters' trust. # please give us the team we deserve.
Who else should have been hired? And that's what I come back to. Yeah, it looked really bad, and I completely agree with the look of it. And that was always going to be the issue. We talked about it the whole way. We talked about it with Jay becoming CEO. We talked about it with the Greg hire. The look is bad. And anytime there's a problem, a bad result, that's going to flare up. And that's not fair to Greg Berhalter as a manager. He's done well as a manager, not so well with the U.S. He's got work to do. But his resume was better than some wanted to allow it to be described as. Could you have gotten better? Maybe. I don't know what the hiring process was like. I don't know the considerations. I don't know if they talked to people who said, no, we don't want it. Don't know that point. And that's a good question to be asked of the Federation as a whole. But, it's not like they hired somebody who was completely unqualified. I don't think that's fair. He's got to perform ultimately, and I think because of the way he was hired, maybe there's more pressure to perform.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of where I always felt with it, and we'll see how it shakes out, but he's not a completely unqualified candidate at all. I don't think that's fair at all. But I agree, it does need a deep clean, and it does need a change of personnel at the top, because these things are not new. They've been going on for decades, and it's just at some point it's got to change. And this goes back to, American soccer as a whole, take U.S. Soccer Federation out of it. you've had a lot of people be able to launch programs, start associations, start state associations, be in these positions, start clubs, and be in these positions for decades and decades and decades, and have not complete unchecked power, but in some ways, yeah, it's happened. And that's not always good when things dramatically change, because soccer in the United States, and yeah, you do have to look at the work that Flynn and Jay Berhalter and others have done to grow it. It's in a different place. Just look at soccer in Atlanta just over the last 10 years, for example. 10 years ago, you did not have professional soccer in Atlanta. Now you have a team that is as massive as Atlanta United is. You have clubs at the youth level that have grown dramatically. There's more clubs. There's increased competition, both for players and amongst the clubs. There's an increasing number of ways that clubs can play. The landscape 10 years down the road is completely different. So the people that were in charge 10 years ago, they might not be the people to be in charge in this landscape. But the way soccer has grown in this country, a lot of times, and not always and not every place, and that's not the case with Georgia soccer directly, but the people who are in charge now were probably in charge or in influential positions 10 years ago, and they were probably in influential positions 10 years before that, and maybe even 10 years before that, which is, unrecognizable to today. And does that mean that you have the skill set to do that? Maybe not. And that's something that soccer's got to come to grips with. And the federation needs to lead the way right now with this, with the hiring of the CEO. They need to set the example, because that's their role, and I hope that they do it.
When you're looking for a CEO, and I mean you, not necessarily the federation, I would think it would need to be someone with business acumen, who understands a growth curve in an industry, has a history of developing revenue, has a history of developing growth with whatever companies they were in touch with. And when it comes to that individual, how much of a knowledge of the sport would you want in that individual? When it comes to this new CEO, you want someone who understands soccer, understands its place, understands it as a business element, or someone who treats it as a thing and not necessarily as a sport? You want it as a business, or do you want it as a sport with that CEO? What would you be looking for?
I think at the federation level for the CEO, it's got to be run as a business. The sport side should be left to the technical staff. You've got Brian McBride in place. You've got Ernie Stewart in place. You've got Kate Markgraf in place. The CEO shouldn't be involved in that. And that's been one of the major issues with some of the friction with Jay Berhalter, has been that he's been involved on the technical side, according to a lot of people. The business and the technical sides have to be separate. I don't know the exact hierarchy with U.S. soccer. I don't know the org chart. I don't know how it flows. I think if I'm understanding it correctly, I think the CEO reports to the president on the off-the-field stuff. I would assume that Ernie Stewart reports to the president on the on-the-field stuff. I don't know if Ernie Stewart reports to the CEO, and I'm not sure exactly how that works. If they do, then you've got to have the CEO who allows the technical people to do their jobs. The business people can't run the soccer side. And honestly, that's been one of the reasons that the soccer business has been what it's been over the years, is you've had soccer people running the business side. Well, now that's started to change a little bit. That's why Flynn and Berhalter do have to be given credit. The organization's in a great place financially. Hasn't always been the case. But now you need to have true separation. The CEO has to drive the business and let the soccer people do the soccer. So I would prefer if the CEO comes in and is completely and utterly involved on the business side. That's it. I would not want them to be a soccer person. If it's a business person who understands soccer, then great. But I don't want their job to have anything to do with doing the soccer part. If Ernie Stewart reports to them, okay, it's reporting. It's making sure that things are being done in the right way, not from a soccer perspective, because I don't want the CEO creating a curriculum for youth coaches, for example. I think the CEO needs to be driving the business and driving the organization, not doing things for the people underneath them. And that's what happens with small organizations. You see it all the time. When you have an organization that started small, you have to do everything. You're doing every single aspect of it. But when it grows, you got to give some of that up if you're going to help it grow. So now you have a chance to bring in somebody who didn't grow it, who didn't have to wear multiple hats, who can wear the right hat and grow the thing even further, because that's what's necessary at this point.
And that was why I wanted to ask the question and try to, delineate the ideas of, okay, bring in someone who understands business, might understand soccer, and just wants to stay on that aisle, as opposed to sitting there and trying to get involved in both aspects of it, the business side and the sports side.
Yeah, I want it to be focused on business. It's got to be, or it's just not going to be correct. I mean, I think that's all the aspects of the Berhalter news. Again, I don't think it's a surprise that he's not going to be the CEO. I think maybe the fact that he resigned now, today, is a bit of a surprise. But if he wasn't going to be the CEO, it's not a surprise that he's moving on. And he'll have opportunities to do whatever. I really think he'll end up in the World Cup organization. And look, two events that have been talked about multiple times in his accomplishments, that 2016 Copa America Centenario and the 2003 Women's World Cup that was moved to the U.S. 4 months before the tournament because of the SARS outbreak. It was supposed to be in China. And you got a World Cup done in 4 months. Now, you had it 4 years before. That helped, and you had the infrastructure to be able to do it. But still, you did it. And that's an accomplishment. So to be involved in a World Cup and organize it, that feels like a perfect fit for him. And hopefully Jay Berhalter and Dan Flynn can create a World Cup that creates a platform for soccer in this country and Canada and Mexico to grow beyond anything that we can envision right now. And I hope that's what their legacy ends up being, because they have given a lot to the game. And they've made mistakes along the way. I think it's kind of obvious from these reviews that things are not what they should be at U.S. Soccer. But now they have a chance to finish out with a major, major accomplishment. And I hope they do it because it will benefit the game as a whole. So that's what I'm expecting for Jay Berhalter, and we'll see what happens. If you have any questions about it, we'll get to it. We'll come back around to it at the end of the show. But we're going to take a quick break, reset, and we're going to get into MLS CBA discussion after this. There's so many different angles and twists and turns. We'll start big and try to drill down into more detail as we go. If you have questions about it, please go ahead and send them our way on Twitter at @SoccerDownHere. I'm going to go run outside and see if there's flurries on my car and make sure I'll be able to drive today, because I'm really freaking out, man.
I'll send the Malamutes.
Yes.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, February 7th. Big day yesterday. The MLS CBA has been agreed to. I don't think it's 100% ratified just yet. You have to get lots of voting done, but it's been agreed to. There will not be a work stoppage. Not a surprise. Some of the things in the CBA are maybe a little surprising, and we'll get into details of it. First off, if you're not following Paul Tenorio, Sam Stejko, the soccer department at The Athletic as a whole, but those two specifically, do it now. Follow them on Twitter. Yep. For Tenorio, I've got the notifications on Twitter. I get buzzed every time he tweets something because when stuff like this happens, he is absolutely the best at getting you as much detail as possible first, and then diving back in and getting some other little nuggets that you might have missed. And he gets this stuff better than anybody. I try really hard to understand all of it and make sure that I know all of it. And, you know, as much work as I put into it, I don't get all of it. And not all of it's widely available. Paul has incredible sources, and he has an incredible understanding of how this stuff goes. So go subscribe to The Athletic for this very reason, because the amount of stuff that Paul and Sam put out yesterday on it, you know, you had the initial report, you had a Q&A that lasted for an hour with a ton of questions, featuring one of our followers, and I believe one of our listeners, Damon Haas. Ton of great questions from Damon. But you get so much great information. And then there was another update this morning. So I want to hit the headlines of it first, and then we'll just start diving into questions and seeing what we can parse through this. So, number one, the spending is increasing. And it is going from mandatory spending, which is your salary cap, and GAM. And I believe it was framed as mandatory spending before. Now it definitely is. That's been one of the new buzzwords out of the CBA. $5.69 million in 2019. That's up to $9.518 by the end of the agreement in 2024. That's an increase of 67%. That's huge. That's big. As expected, and maybe not in the way that it happened, but at least part of it. Discretionary TAM. Or, sorry, non-discretionary TAM, my fault. The discretionary TAM will remain, but it will decrease over time. That's that $2.8 million right now. By the end of the agreement, it'll be down to $2.125. And it's expected to be the same kind of rules on it. It's for those guys that are $1 million more than the maximum budget charge. So last year it was making a salary of $530,000 to $1.53 million. You could use TAM on them, and that's it. All the other TAM, the non-discretionary TAM, that's turning into GAM. So the amounts that were assigned to teams each year, $1.2 million, that's just rolling into GAM. And GAM is increasing too. So by 2024, you'll have 3.093 million of GAM. The best way to explain that, you have a salary cap, and then you have salary cap space that you can trade. That's what GAM is. You can trade cap space. So if you're going to use all of it, cool. And you got to use it for something. If you're not going to use it, trade it. Get an international slot, get draft picks, move up in the allocation order, whatever, player, etc. But that's big to have more tradable cap space with that non-discretionary TAM turning into GAM. And you can use it in a wider way. Again, TAM you can use in a very specific way. GAM you can use for whatever. So that's huge. That TAM, think back to all the TAM that Atlanta United has acquired in trades. That's now more valuable because you can use it in more situations. Pretty smart. And I wonder if maybe there was an idea that this could be happening. So what you're doing essentially from a big picture standpoint on this stuff is you are increasing the pot of money that can be spent in any way and decreasing the amount of restricted money that the league works with. That's a good thing for the players, and it's something that the players fought pretty hard for. Another big one, and we'll see how significant it is. For the first time in league history, the players could share in the media revenue with the next broadcast agreement that begins in 2023. Might not be huge straight away, but it could be. And that's what's so weird about this next broadcast agreement and where MLS is, because we know ratings are not great on TV. They haven't declined. They haven't gone up as much as they need to. That's something the league has to address. I think one way the league addresses that is a better product on the field, which has been steadily growing. I think there's a lot of other ways they address it, and I hope a lot of it is with better product and production of these broadcasts. I think that will help a ton, and all the wraparound stuff around it to make these broadcasts must-see TV. But, as we know, the landscape is dramatically changing for broadcast rights. One, live sports still dominate TV because it's the only thing that has kept some from cutting cords. So they're incredibly valuable. You look at the highest rated broadcasts every year, and so many of them are the NFL. Other sports are involved too, but live sports are critical. However, you are seeing streaming options become bigger and bigger and bigger in this space. Somebody, whether it's an Amazon, a Netflix, a Hulu, whoever, those seem to be the heaviest hitters in this. ESPN Plus could go for it as a branch of ESPN, which would include the ESPN broadcast and ABC, but could expand their ESPN Plus side. You're going to see one of these streaming partners go in heavy to get a property and to get some exclusivity of that property. Is MLS going to be that one they jump on? Maybe so. So the players now have a piece of that cake. And that percentage that would go to the players if these rights agreements hit certain thresholds, that goes into the cap and GAM. So you could see a scenario where if there's a new TV deal for 2023 that is substantial, you could see the increased spending be substantial at the cap level. The cap and the GAM would go up. That's pretty exciting. And that's something that I did not expect at all. I hadn't heard anybody talk about that. Another one people hadn't talked about is something that I think we got a little bit of credit for from somebody on Twitter. The idea of this U22 initiative. Now, it's not fully fleshed out. The rules aren't there. But basically, you're going to be able to, right now you have 3 designated players. You're going to be able to add up to 3 more that are going to have limited cap hits to spend what you want over the top of that. So you're going to take 3 designated players and add 3 more, but they have to be under the age of 22. Looks like the cap hits are going to be small, more like young designated players. So think essentially you're adding 3 more young designated players that teams can sign. And a lot of teams are already heading in this direction. But, man, this is going to motivate everybody else to do it. Because if you start hitting right on these signings, see, Gwen's excited. She's fired up about
she
it.
should be.
Yeah, she's under the age of 22. She might get signed. I don't know. It could happen. She's negotiating a contract right now, it sounds like.
Young DP Gwen.
Yeah. It's a big, big, big deal. This is a huge opportunity for MLS, and I love this initiative. Now, that new designated player rule that had been reported by The Athletic could still be added. The league, quote, will have the right to limit the compensation for the third TP to the maximum TAM salary, unless the player is 23 years old or younger, in which case there will be no limit. Right now, there's there's only one team right now that affects, and that's the LA Galaxy. Toronto, if they sign the winger Piatti that they are exploring, they would be the other one. Last year, it was just 2. It was the same 2. It was Toronto and the LA Galaxy that would have been affected by it. I don't love it, but if it is in combination with then potentially adding 3 more U22 spots, I don't think it even really truly comes into play. I would like it if it wasn't a hard and fast rule, if there was a way it's almost like now if you want to buy the third designated player slot, you have to pay a certain amount. That goes back into growing the cap and GAM for everybody else. If you made a stiff penalty, if Chicharito becomes available and the LA Galaxy want to do it and they don't have the spot to do it and they don't or can't or whatever make a trade to become compliant in that way, they got to pay a penalty to everybody else. Everybody else gets $500,000 in GAM, or I don't know, something, $100,000 in GAM. Who knows? I'd like to have that element to it because I wouldn't want to keep a Chicharito or, who knows, a Lionel Messi or a Cristiano Ronaldo or whoever else that could ever become available. I wouldn't want to keep them out of the league for this. So hopefully there's a little more flexibility in that, but it is a very small number of teams that'll be affected. And if it goes along with the U22 initiative, I can work with that. I can deal with that. The DP budget charge is the same. Free agency qualification has extended. The DP budget charge, when I say the same, it'll continue to rise at the same amount. That's been consistent for a long time. Free agency qualification, it's extended, and they got more than I thought they would. It's 24 years of age and 5 years of experience rather than 28 years of age and 8 years of experience. Gwen is really fired up about free agency, too. So now she wants a U22 contract, and then she wants to be a free agent. Man, Gwen, out of control. Yep. It will more than double the number of players eligible for free agency, according to people familiar with the terms of the agreement. There's no limit, according to Paul Tenorio's sources, of how many MLS free agents a team can sign per offseason. Under the past CBA, they were limited to 2. There is still a cap on raises for free agents, but it's extended a little bit. And I think Jeff Lorenowitz mentioned it, that this is going to force teams to invest in infrastructure, which I actually like. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Okay, if one team can't just outbid another, then they've got to have something to draw the player. If it's training ground, if it's coaching staff, whatever it is, they've got to be able to attract people without just cutting a fat check. That should increase the quality of the league and keep those wild bidding wars from happening. I think that's a good thing. I think they can keep expending the amount a player can get a raise for, but it's a good start. There are some changes in the way free agency works for designated players, how TAM can be used to re-sign free agents, and this was something we talked about when it came to Julian Gressel. Now it removes some of the restrictions that come along with TAM. TAM can be used for free agency as long as the salary amount meets TAM thresholds. In previous years, the league had to determine which players were eligible for TAM money in free agency. And this came up a lot in the Julian Gressel conversation. And honestly, I think this is why Julian Gressel hasn't signed a new contract with DC United just yet, is these TAM restrictions on moving a player into the TAM category. You had to get it approved. If you don't now, then you just sign him to a new deal and you're good. Now, Gressel's not a free agent yet. We'll see how all that works. I think this restrictions going away with TAM will allow DC to sign him to a new contract, and I would assume that'll happen sooner rather than later. Minimum salaries going up in some good ways. There's a better bonus structure for players on minimum salaries. Charter flights, which was something a lot of people got really wound up about, instead of being 4 optional, now it is 8 mandatory. And you're limited to 8, but you have to do 8. That's a huge jump in this league, where it was before 4 optional, and a lot of teams never used one. Now you got to use 8. That's a lot of spending. That's a huge commitment, and it's going to go to 16 by 2024. 16 legs, not 16 trips. So sometimes you will fly, commercial to a location and charter back, depending on flight schedules, depending on how you want to do it. Sometimes you'll charter there and back. It just depends. But it's 8 legs mandatory now. So Philadelphia, for example, last year they didn't use one when they should have. Now they will have to use 8 mandatory charter legs of trips. That's big. Another one that we'll see how it shakes out. In the past, and MLS did this when they added TAM after that CBA was done, which did not make the players very happy. Now the league has to bargain with the MLSPA in terms of adding spending into the league. And one idea was that there had to be a corresponding unrestricted spending amount that goes into the league budget to go along with any kind of restricted spending like TAM was. So that's big. I think the players got a lot here, maybe a little bit more than I thought they would. And I don't think the owners are hurt by anything here. Probably the biggest thing for them that maybe some fought was that charter flight situation. And if that was the number one thing that the players wanted because they felt like the other things, including free agency, were trending in the right direction, then the players got a big win. Because taking a Philadelphia Union, for example, from spending 0 on charter flights to spending, I don't know. I don't know what this total turns out to be, but, around $1 million, maybe less, probably less. But a significant expenditure that they were able to opt out of before. That's huge. That's a huge get for the league, or for the player side. So I'm glad it's done more than anything. And I'm maybe not surprised at the timing, but a little surprised at some of the things that come out of it. That U22 initiative is really exciting. The fact that now the players and the league are both motivated to make this next broadcast agreement as big as possible. These are all good things for the league. I think everybody won here.
No doubt. And I think that when I was looking at all of these lists, for me, I went straight to charter flights and saw those numbers and saw that increase. And I think that, you're looking now at, all right, which owners are going to be investing in their teams? Because if you have a Philadelphia who wanted nothing to do with charter flights, now they have to. Down the line, as these charter legs increase and that expenditure increases, how do they respond with that? How do they respond with bringing in players? How do they, run that balance? And, how many other owners are going to want to, down the line, I'm not saying that this is going to be something that's going to set off major fire alarms, but because of the investments that are going to be made across the board for franchises over the next handful of years, how many of the lesser spending owners are going to want to continue to invest in their teams, and how many of them are going to want to sell to those who want to get into the league as it is growing? I mean, for me, that's a question of economics down the line.
Should have known you would go to the negative side of it. it's increased spending, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not crazy. If teams are that extended to where these spending increases are going to break you, then they should have sold before.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody at that case. I think there's owners that have chosen to spend less because they could. I don't think this is going to break anybody because revenues are going up too. You know, I mean, that's a fact. And no matter what anybody tries to tell you, revenues are growing in the league. They can grow faster, and hopefully they do, but they're growing. The league is growing. Things are good. I don't think any of these spending increases break anybody. I don't see that at all. I think what could break people is the fact that because of some of this, and especially this U22 initiative,
which I really like.
What's that?
I really like the U22.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not done yet, and we'll get into a little bit more here in a second. But you've got an opportunity for teams that want to spend more to do it. So you haven't changed that. You haven't said, no, we're not going to have teams separate in spending. You've honestly created another way where teams can spend more. So your teams that want to spend more will have the ability to. I think that's what's going to push owners out, is they're going to say, we can't compete. I don't think this level of increased spending is going to break anybody. I don't. I really don't see that. I think it's going to be more of, we're falling behind and I can't keep up. And I need to sell for the good of the club and pressure or whatever. Like, I need to move on because I'm holding the club back. That's what I think is going to happen more. Tofka's freaking out about the U22 initiative, and I want to clarify what has been written about it. And this is coming from The Athletic, coming from Paul Tenorio, Sam Stejskal. In addition, beginning in 2021, MLS, quote, will have the discretion to allow clubs to sign up to 3 players who are 22 or younger with a reduced budget charge. Details of this new 22 and under player initiative, the amount of the reduced budget charge, what kinds of players will be eligible, etc., weren't made clear on Thursday. A source familiar with the negotiations said that the initiative isn't fully fleshed out yet and that additional details could be determined in the coming months. So it was fleshed out enough to get agreed to here. The players are on board with it. It's not another new level of spending that would have to be approved. This has been approved, but it's not finalized yet. Tenorio wrote in the Q&A, yes, we do expect some restrictions, but nothing major. From what we are hearing early on, it looks like these slots give teams a chance to spend good money on younger players, significant funds. But yes, there will be some restrictions to salaries. Now, further, and this was from this morning's update from Tenorio, the details of the program aren't fully fleshed out, but it's likely the budget charges will be similar to those of young designated players under the most recent roster rules, which are set at $150,000 and $200,000 depending on the age of the player. So it might not be exactly like 3 designated players that are U22 and under. If it is, wow, I'm all on board. If it isn't, maybe it's more like TAM level guys in those ages that you can add. I don't know. And that's what we'll wait and see. Maybe there's a variation. Maybe it's 1 that you can go whatever you want. Maybe there's 2 you can't. Maybe there's 2 you can do whatever you want. Maybe there's 1 you can't. Who knows? But it's going to be a minimal cap hit, and you can spend well above that on players under the age of 22, 3 more slots that are going to open up. That's pretty amazing. And for a league that I think is getting much better at recruiting young, exciting talent that can grow and become a source of revenue, this is the way you get more teams on board with that. This is it. So this is the initiative that when I heard about it, immediately grabbed my attention, and I love it. I want to see what the restrictions are. And I'm assuming if they're talking about restrictions, then it won't essentially be another designated player that's under the age of 22. Maybe not completely. Maybe it will be a $2 million cost per year if acquisition plus salary. Maybe it's 3. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe it's an extended version of TAMP. I don't know. But it is something where you can spend more than they hit on the cap for players that are under the age of 22. And if you're an Atlanta United fan, well, Atlanta United has shown that they will spend on those players. Ezequiel Barco is a prime example. And you will see when Ezequiel Barco moves on to Europe, a huge return from that. So this only motivates clubs to do more of that. LAFC has done it. Brian Rodriguez coming in is a prime example. You're going to see more do it with this type of initiative because this is what's going to be separating teams further. Designated players already separate teams. If you hit on these players and you get a player, for example, giving you $1 million cap hit of production for $150,000 on your cap, you're going to be a much better team. And if you've got the opportunity to do that with 3 guys, lineups are going to get younger, rosters are going to get younger, talent, top talent is going to get younger in this league. And that's going to make it more attractive for potential buyers to come in and buy players. That perception that has started to change, this is going to help really kick it into another gear. And this is going to make MLS a real destination league for top young South American talent. It's a big, big move. This is a big deal. This could go down as one of the bigger moves that MLS has made in the last few years. I really think it could have that kind of impact. Agree.
Circle gets the square. I agree with you on this. Like I said, I saw the U22 stuff come across. No, I saw the U22 thing come across, and that was one of the first things that drew my eyes to all of this. And no talk, I don't think that.
Well, it's a daily double. It's a good thing.
Yes, it is. It is a daily double. A good thing. But no, Tafka, I do not anticipate owners completely checking out once this new deal is signed. If it's going to be someone, it's going to be down the line with the 15% increases in salary and all that kind of stuff. I'm not anticipating someone running for the exit right now with this new deal.
We'll see. Yeah, I don't think so either. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back, get to all your questions, whether it's Jay Berhalter related, whether it's CBA related, whether it's Atlanta Birmingham related. Don't forget the U.S. women play tonight with an opportunity to go to the Olympics. You got questions about that, we'll get into it as well. Wherever you want to go for the last hour plus of the show, we're here. But we'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, February 7th. All kinds of stuff to get to. Y'all got questions. Let's get into them right now.
Emery Russell has a couple. He went backwards before he came in, before he went forward. He said a couple things. Back to the jersey convo from yesterday. If Atlanta ever did a third kit, something like Monterey's black and gray kit from this year would be double fire emoji.
Like it. Yeah, that's a sweet kit.
And then Emery wanted to know what our thoughts were on the new CBA. He says, goodbye TAM with a question mark.
Not exactly. I mean, it's restricted in how much you have of it because it's going to roll into GAM. But there is still a place for TAM. And I think that's why the league fought to keep the discretionary TAM part of it. Look, the way teams can choose to outspend one another now, discretionary TAM up to 2.8 million right now, and that's going to continually decrease over the next 4 years to just over 2 million. So you can use that. You're going to have fewer players that are TAM players because you're going to have less TAM to work with. But you're going to have more GAM to work with, which you can use over different ways. So, did it really change? No, it's just you're going to use a different acronym to pay a player down. But you're going to have more flexibility in that. So, you're not getting rid of TAM. You're just limiting it. But teams can still use discretionary TAM in the ways that TAM is used. And they can take advantage of this U22 initiative. And they can spend what they spend on designated players. Maybe 2 designated players. They can do whatever they want with it. And 1 has to be young or within that TAM threshold. So, there's still ways for teams to separate themselves. TAM still has a minor place, but you're giving more flexibility in the way teams build out their cap now, which I think is a good thing.
Daniel Price thinks the new CBA is a great thing for MLS and players. He says he feels like giving some TV revenue to players will make it much more appealing for players to want to come here and earn some cash. The players may not like bandits this time, I feel.
I don't know if it's going to help attract players, but it's just going to help everybody be in partnership to grow the league. And now, players won't see that TV deal and say, oh, well, man, the owners just made a boatload of money and we're not going to see any of it. Well, they are. Now, in time, you'll see more discussion about how much of those deals that the players see, and that's honestly one of the biggest points of discussion for your NBA CBA, your NFL CBA, your Major League Baseball CBA, all the others is, all right, you're making X amount on media, how much are we going to get of that? That's what it comes down to more than anything. Here, now you've opened that door. It's like free agency in the last one. You got the door open. You're at the table now, and then it's just going to be how you split it up. And as we saw in the last one, free agency was incredibly restrictive. Now it is much more open to more players. I think next time around, because you'll have a new agreement in place on TV rights, the players will push for a greater percentage of that. And they should. But now they got the door open, and it's a good step.
Alex at Cuppers this morning, he says, seriously about the CBA, is it wrong of me to be happy for the players for the charter flights, but also a little sad to be losing competitive advantage against teams like Philly for making them mandatory? He's got other stuff.
It's kind of funny, but no, don't feel sad. There's still plenty of other ways to have a competitive advantage. And Atlanta's done a really good job of using those ways in the past. And if you're going to open up another avenue for it, I would rather have the same number of charter flights as everybody, but have the ability to use my top scouting department to go get 3 more U22 players that maybe other clubs can't take as much advantage of that initiative.
And I think this is what Alex was getting into with this next sentence. He says, what is this third DP having to be young but with loopholes stuff? And
well, it's been reported. Like, this is not new. And it's not agreed to yet either. So hold the phone on it. But it's been reported. I don't think it's a great look. I get it. And if it goes in combination with the U22 initiative, I can deal. I'm okay with that trade-off, because what I didn't like was this made it appear, even though there's only 2 teams that are affected by it right now, it made it appear like a cutback on spending. But if you combine it with the ability to spend more, again, in a targeted way, like they added targeted allocation money, it made teams spend in a certain way, and I still think it really benefited the league. This will really benefit the league because it is making teams spend in a certain way. If you're a team that doesn't have a great scouting department and doesn't look at young talent coming out of South America, well, now you better, or everybody's going to pass you. So you're going to have to invest in those areas, and that's going to benefit the league. So this new designated player thing, what it does, if it is as has been previously reported, the third designated player has to be, or one of your 3, has to be under the age of 23, or has to be making less than the TAM threshold, which is $1 million more than the max budget charge. Out of the whole league last year, the only 2 teams that would have had a problem with this rule would have been Toronto and the LA Galaxy. And the LA Galaxy, with losing Zlatan, signing Chicharito, moving Pavón into a designated player spot, they would still have a problem with that rule, and I'm assuming that there would be some kind of mechanism for them to get compliant. And Toronto right now does not have a problem with the rule, but if they sign the winger from Spain, Piatti, that they are linked to, then they would have an issue with the new rule. So that's it. Nobody else did. Most teams have one of the 2, either a designated player under the age of 23 or one of their designated players making less than that max TAM threshold, a player that could be bought down if they wanted to, but they don't need to if they don't want to, or they don't have 3 designated players. So there was only 2 teams that were affected by it, and those 2 teams would still be affected by it, by all accounts, going into the season. And part of the rule, when it is approved, would have to deal with that. How long? I mean, you're not going to... Let's be real here. I think sometimes when this stuff comes up, people freak out about, like, well, what are they going to do? Have to cut Chicharito? No. They're not going to make it immediately effective. I would assume that there would be some kind of rolling it in and maybe a penalty to pay if you go over it. Honestly, that's the way I would do it. Like I said before.
A grandfather clause with a penalty?
Well, I would just make it a penalty, period. But, of course, like, you have to have a grandfather clause because you've got guys signed to contracts and they were operating under the previous rules. I would just say, just to make it clean and easy, is, okay, you want to go above this rule, you want to spend more and you don't want to sign the young players, fine. You pay a luxury tax. Whatever it is, and that money goes back in to benefit the teams that don't do it. Fine. If other teams get 50, 100,000, 200,000 and cap space, cool. If you want to make it to where that luxury tax is based off the cap hit of the least expensive designated player that makes you non-roster compliant, fine. It's some percentage and you have to pay that into the league, and fine. There's ways to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish without making that rule hard and fast. But it's not approved yet, so there's still twists and turns of it. I don't think it's as big of a deal as people have tried to make it out to be. I really don't.
Alex's third comment, he says he wished that they got rid of TAM instead of the steady reduction of it. Why keep it when it's just minimizing simplify and inform the fans whenever possible?
Because TAM now is discretionary. Because teams don't have to use it, they can use it. Now I think it really serves the idea that was initially behind it. The initial launch of TAM was to make teams beef up players 4 through 8, 4 through 9 on their roster. And maybe that's expanded a little bit more as you've added more TAM into the system. The discretionary TAM side of it makes you still do that. So if you want to beef up those spots on your roster, you can. And honestly, look at it this way. If this U22 initiative, even with some restrictions, say you max out. You have 3 designated players. You have 3 U22 players that are top guys. That's your best 6 players on your roster in your lineup. If now TAM helps you add one more top guy as a number 7 guy in the lineup, maybe even a number 8 guy if you spread it around. You got 2.8 to work with initially, and it goes down to 2 to buy guys down. Well, you can make your team even better if you choose. So now it's not so much about, honestly, the transparency of it is much easier to manage now. Now, we don't know how much GAM everybody has. We don't know how much cap space everybody has. And I hope that at one point becomes available. But anybody who uses TAM, you know it's discretionary now. You know that it's an owner going into their own pocket for it. So that at least helps you have a little more understanding of it. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with still giving owners that option to spend more above and beyond. I think it's important for the ambitious owners to have opportunities to be ambitious.
A lot of other folks with a lot of other stuff this morning.
Cool.
And let me go to the point where we need to get caught up. There's a lot of CBA stuff this morning, and I'm having to scroll down. Nathan Pugh. I feel an ultimate player's win would be to get rid of free agency, closed league, etc. I know. But true freedom of movement would offer more to players. MLS CBA just wants to trap players inside the league to increase revenue for themselves. It's all about the money.
I don't know where to go with that, Nathan. The players want free agency. And getting rid of it would make it worse for the players. I don't follow that. I do get where you're trying to go with not so much the PA wants to trap players. I don't think that's the case at all. I think the Players Association wants players to make as much money as possible. They're not trying to trap guys in the league. What the Players Association wants to do is make the spending, make that money that is increasing be more available for guys in the league rather than new guys coming into the league. They want to benefit their existing members, not future members. It's a key distinction. That was why they pushed for TAM to become GAM, for example. The free agency part, that's what the players want. They want more choice, and they should have it. You get to play where you want, and you get to better your career. I mean, if you get drafted, let's say you're not Julian Gressel, ended up at a good team, but you get drafted by a team that's just not good, and you get in there and you start playing, and you're trapped. That's bad for the players. That's not good for a player's development, and you could completely stunt a potential top player. So I don't think that would benefit the league at all. But the Players Association is, very clear in wanting to have its current members make more money as opposed to new members coming in from outside the league making that money. That's a definite.
Tafka, who was out of circulation yesterday, has his takes on the kits since we had that AMA yesterday. He says that Atlanta's is very good, a tad simple, but elegant and classy, and I like the textured center stripe. Best looking of our 3 away kits so far. The one stripe sock is a nice touch. He gives it, I guess, on a rating of 1 to 10, he gives it an 8.2.
Okay, that's a pretty good rating. Why the 0.2 though? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he has like 5 judges and he takes a composite and something like that, but then he goes and grades all of the other kits. Let me just go and give some of the higher ones that are either high or low on his scale. He says DCU gives him an 8, retro done right. LAFC's is an 8. The Galaxy's is on the Tafka scale is a 7.9.
That's too high.
He says Minnesota United is an 8.1. I love sublimation. Nashville is a great contrast at a 7.5. Red Bulls, he gives it an 8. He says it pops.
It kind of pops. I don't like it because of the history of it. You're looking way too much like DC United, and that's your rival. That's why I don't like it. Black and red, I mean, obviously I'm kind of a little biased towards black and red myself, so I kind of like it. But it just is weird for the Red Bulls to be in that. It doesn't feel right for them. I am glad that Nashville's getting some props in this regard, because I kind of like Nashville's kits. I think a lot of people didn't. I'm okay with them. I just want to see them mix and match the shirts and shorts and socks from different groups.
Yeah, and he likes Orlando's. He gives it a 7.9.
I didn't like that.
Philadelphia 7.5, Toronto 7.7, Vancouver 7.9. Okay, here's his low grades. Seattle, he gives it a 2.6.
Wow. Okay.
RSL, he says it's better than Houston's. He gives it a 3.5.
It is better than Houston's.
And Houston, he gave a 2.5. I think 2.5 from Houston is the lowest on the Tofka scale. He says Portland's.
What do you give to Columbus?
Crew, he says, why is there no disco ball emoji? He gave it a 4.
Oh, that's the worst of the really goofy ones to me. That would be the 2, and Houston would be slightly better, and RSL would be the best of those weird wavy things.
And then he says his brief thoughts on the new CBA. It's a near perfect win for the players. For the fans, it's excellent, but a bit more in cap space would have been nice, though I was pleased with the increases the league agreed to.
You'll see the cap continue to go up. It's just steady. There's no point right now to get crazy with it. It's not quite there yet. And then, look, that's realistic. You know, it's a fact. It's not quite where we all would love it to be right now in terms of revenue. So you got to be smart. So it's going to go up. I think this next broadcast agreement has the potential for it to kick up a good notch. You need to be in a position to blow it up after the 26 World Cup. That's where you need to be in the position to really start to go big. And that's where it gets interesting on the Players Association side, because there will be more money to work with, but how are they going to fight how it's spent? That's going to be the question, because, look, at that point, when there's more money to spend, you're going to be wanting to go out and bring new players in. You're going to be wanting to go out to France and to the Netherlands and even to Spain and Italy, and not getting the 28 to 32-year-olds like you're starting to get now, getting guys on their second deal. You're not going to get a guy who's going to Barcelona, but you might get a guy who chooses to go to Sevilla or Valencia, that level. After 26, you might be in a different category for your bidding. And that's going to affect it. Now, it will trickle down to players who are in the league already and are going to make money. That'll happen naturally. But will the Players Association try to fight more players coming in and more spending going to that group of players? I don't think so, and I think that's why the media rights part is very important. Because bringing in stars like that and spending more to bring them in will raise the media rights, which will put more money into the cap, which will put more money into the pockets of existing players. So there is now a justification that the league has on it. And I think that part's brilliant on the league part. Yes, you're going to give up some money. You're going to give up some of that rights fee that you hope will increase. You're going to give up some of that to the players. It's a smart move because it gives you leverage. It gives you the ability to say, well, look, we need to be able to increase spending in these ways because we want to go get these players that people want to watch, and our ratings will go up, and then we will get more money in the next agreement, and then you will get more money in the next agreement. I think It's a very smart play. It looks like a big win for the players. I think in the end of it, it's going to end up being great leverage for the league. And everybody's going to benefit. I mean, more money's more money. It's a good thing. Everybody's going to get some. But I think it's going to end up being more valuable to the league.
Mr. Fantastic has come in this morning.
Oh,
and he wants to
hello,
know,
Mr. Fantastic.
How will this new CBA benefit the league and competition in Champions League?
It allows you to have better rosters, and that's going to allow you to compete better in Champions League. One thing that people tried to zero in on this, and I think I've got this right. Champions League has been the charter flight situation for Champions League and for playoffs. The league's paid for that. So making that mandatory, I think it already was. So there's nothing new there. But if you can spend more, the flow chart would lead you to believe that you can have better players. And if you have better players, you should be able to compete better. So I think it's honestly that simple. I think from a scouting perspective, if I'm looking at those U22 guys, I'm looking at players who have Copa Libertadores, Copa Sudamericana experience in South America that can come into Champions League and be comfortable. So if I'm able to go get 3 more guys that are young and hungry and have experience playing internationally, well, that could be a really big change in the composure of teams in these situations.
Nando signs this morning. Atlanta promised and delivered exciting soccer for the first 2 years. We won a couple of trophies last year, but the product on the field was not as exciting. The buzz for the team started to die down. What kind of team will we see in 2020? Is a less exciting brand of soccer okay?
Who said the buzz has started to die down, first off? Because I'm not seeing that just yet. The season ticket renewal numbers were very strong, according to reports. Tickets are not easy to come by, so I don't know. Look, everybody looks at a game differently. I did not feel it was less exciting. That's me speaking. I did not feel that. Some did.
I did.
Some did. I'm not gonna tell people that they're wrong for feeling that way. I didn't. I don't know why they exactly felt that way. And that's the thing that I keep trying to get to the bottom of. Why did it feel less exciting? And was that for the whole season, or was that at the beginning when it was not completely in sync? Was it less exciting at the end? That's what I want to know. And that's what I'm not sure. I don't know what the narrative is there, honestly. But no, I don't think the team is trying to be less exciting. Just like I've had conversations with people, I don't think Frank de Boer wanted the team to play slow early. I think Frank de Boer wanted the team to be organized. And if that, as they were learning how to be organized, if that slowed them down, that's why it slowed them down. Not because the coach is saying, well, go slow. We don't want to play fast. There's a reason for it. Just like there's no reason to say we don't want to play exciting soccer. Like, that doesn't even make sense. You wouldn't ever talk about that. It's like, we want to be boring. No. That doesn't make any sense. Are there games where you have to be more conservative? Yeah. That's sports. Are there games where you can open it up more because you can overmatch a team? Yep. That's, again, it's just sports. So as the league gets more competitive, are you going to have games that might get tighter? Yeah, it'll happen. LAFC, you got to be careful playing them. You can't just go crazy and open the game up. You're going to get blitzed. You got to be smart. You got to be smart against teams that can hurt you in that way. So that might mean you play a little slower, you be a little more conservative. That's just how it is. That's how sports work. So I hope that I guess what I hope with all of this is that people are thinking about what they like in the game, what they don't like in the game, and come into these decisions for how they feel, not a narrative that somebody's feeding them, definitely not a narrative from overseas about the manager's previous stops, because I've seen a lot of, I'm not saying that's coming here at all, I'm saying in general, I've seen a lot of parroting of the Daily Mail et al. About Frank de Boer and things that were said about him at Crystal Palace that have no bearing on what's going on here. It's died down. It'll pop back up when people want it to pop back up. If there's a loss, people will start, quoting the Daily Mail again, or any of the others, the Guardian, whoever. That's a shame. look at the game the way you want to look at it, what you like and what you don't, and think about these things. If it's boring to you, why is it boring to you? What do you want to see? That's what's happening here as Atlanta's soccer culture is maturing. You start to think about what you enjoy in the game and what you don't enjoy. Like, this team's not defensive. Did they score a little less than they did in the first 2 years? They did. They did. There were some goal-scoring opportunities that weren't converted. There were a few less opportunities created. That happened. It did. It happened some years. I don't think 1 year is a trend at all. I think they need a secondary goal scorer. They need somebody to step up and replace the production that Villalba had in 17, that Villalba and Almiron had in 18. Well, both of them had in 17 too. Because you didn't really have that last year. I don't think that's because of the style being boring. I think it's you didn't have somebody step up in that way. Gressel scored 5. You didn't have that secondary goal scorer. Pitti scored 5. You could use more from him. You could use more from Barco. Boseto could be a guy that gives you some more goals. It might not be one guy directly becoming that secondary goal threat, but it might be, instead of 2 guys with 5 behind Joseph, it might be 3 guys with 8. And that'd be great. Take that in a heartbeat. And I think your scoring numbers are back without any change in the way you play, just increased production from some. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. But these questions are good. These conversations are good. It's not a bad thing at all. It's just I want to go the next step beyond. Why was it boring? What is boring to you in soccer? What is exciting to you in soccer? Because sometimes exciting and winning do not go hand in hand. They don't. And that's something that's going to have to be addressed at some point. Because I think when teams in sports in general decide to go play exciting, whether they play run and gun basketball or they play the run and shoot in football or whatever, they're doing that in some ways because they know they can't compete. How many run and shoot teams won anything in the NFL? Mm-hmm. I don't think it ever happened. Because they couldn't really truly compete. But man, they were exciting. There was stuff happening. You need to be careful at times to win. And what's more important? Is exciting more important than winning? Because at times you do have to make a choice, depending on how you define exciting. And I think some, and I'm not speaking for, is this Mr. Fantastic?
No. This was Nando Sainz.
Oh, sorry, Nando. I'm not speaking for Nando specifically because I don't know what Nando considers exciting or boring. But sometimes you can't just be exciting to attack, because generally that's where the excitement's going, and leave gaps behind and concede a bunch of goals. I think it is a fairly safe way of putting it is that teams that are bad defensively don't win championships. Teams that are good defensively win championships, or can win championships. Teams that are good defensively and can score goals as needed are far more likely to win championships. But I don't think teams that are offense heavy with bad defense really win championships. Something to consider. So you've got to find the balance.
I mean, you can have an exciting 1-0 game. You can have a boring 1-0 game. You can have an exciting 5-4.
All that's there, but I don't know how people define it. I'm not going to tell people, like, yes, right, a 1-0 game is exciting. It is. You are wrong. In my opinion, yeah, to me it can be. I can watch a 4-3 game and be bored to tears. Mm-hmm. I can watch a 1-0 game and be enthralled.
Yes.
Games are games. It's not about the scoring for me that just equals excitement. I think for some it does. It doesn't for me. What is it for people? That's what I want to know. And as these things come up, that's why I always try to ask, what makes it exciting? What makes it boring? Not just it's exciting or boring. What is it that makes it that way for you? And what do you want to see? Because that's all part of creating the culture. It's like we've talked about with a Barcelona, for example. Barcelona has a culture of the way they play, and they can win And that's great, and they like it. But there is a heavy expectation on playing in a certain manner. Real Madrid doesn't have that. Real Madrid win, period. I don't care. Now, I think what they've learned a little bit is even Mourinho pushed the boundaries of that. And it was, okay, we like to win, but he didn't win enough for what he was doing to us. If you're going to be like that, you better really win. But some clubs don't even care at all. It's just, we're going to win trophies, cool. I don't think that's the case here. But I don't think that style question is defined yet. Because for Barcelona, it's pretty specific. Like, you need to win, and you need to have the ball, and you need to have possession, and you need to be a team that controls that. So it's interesting how this stuff comes up, and that's why I want to continue having these conversations when they emerge. They're good to have, and I hope it makes people think a little bit.
Yeah, Chris Hutchison says that car wrecks are exciting, but who really wants to participate?
I don't like it. I don't want the whiplash.
And then the Colonel has come in this morning, and he says perhaps the, quote, less exciting aspect of it, as I get the tweet back, he says perhaps the less exciting crowd was hoping for 7 goals in multiple matches. 5 consecutive clean sheets was exciting. The greatest goal scorer in MLS history, scoring in 15 straight matches, was exciting. Lamar Hunt was exciting.
Yeah, again, I don't want to tell people what's exciting to them, because I do want to know. I really do want to know. I had plenty of exciting moments last year. I had plenty of exciting moments in 18 and 17. It's not about, very narrow definitions of it. So exciting at the expense of being effective is kind of the question that I keep coming back to. Is it about you need to score 70 goals a season to be excited about it, or do you need to win trophies? Because it's not always easy to do both. 18 was pretty special in that regard.
Back to our discussion briefly in hour number 1. Michael Head and Chris Hutchison said that question of who they could have hired as a coach, maybe they could have interviewed a certain former Atlanta United manager.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Again, saying that Greg Berhalter's qualified is not saying that he would have been my first choice. I want to make that clear. He's also not a bum off the street who had no business getting the job. That's very unfair to put him in that category. I think they should have looked elsewhere. I think there were options that they should have explored, and especially one that was doing a very good job in Atlanta and was hired by your rival and expressed an interest in being interviewed. It's kind of a big duh. That's a whole different conversation than saying Berhalter was qualified, because he was. I mean, outside of Tata Martino, could you have went overseas? Maybe that would have brought a whole lot of question marks into it, because that's more risky, but you could have hit a good hire there. You might have missed completely. It wasn't a bad ultimate hire, but you didn't consider what could have been your best candidate, and your rival considered was a great candidate because he hired him.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue here. It's Berhalter being qualified is a fact. Tata has accomplished more, and he expressed an interest in the job, and you didn't even have an interview. That's craziness.
Jeremy York using hashtag Friday Fun Day. He's asking for advice.
Uh-oh.
Morning, sirs. I'm going to the brew house for an event this weekend and would like to hear your suggestions for what to order, solid and liquid-wise. I'll take listener answers as well for those listening live. Thanks, and have a good weekend.
I mean, I'm not crazy on the beer side. I can go with something new on tap. I can go with something local. I can also go with a Modelo Especial or a Dos Equis or something simple as well. So I'm not the best there. People can chime in on that. I know John's not going to help you in that regard either. So
nope,
that's okay. Beer, you really can't go wrong. You're going to have a ton of choices. One thing, if you're feeling adventurous at the brew house, is you can get a painkiller, which is a good drink that the brew house has made very famous. Go check it out and see if a mixed drink is of your persuasion or not. Beer, you're going to have a ton of choices, so you'll be set. Food, I mean, I've tried a lot of stuff on the new menu, and it's all been good. The burgers are really good. I love the tacos. The tacos are maybe my favorite new addition completely. So I dig those. The Scottish sausage rolls are really, really good. I actually haven't had any of those in a while, and those have always been one of my favorites. So tons of good options. John can tell you the virtues of the chicken Caesar salad that he gets every time.
Yes, he can, because it is grilled chicken and it comes out warm. So you have the hot side hot and the cool side cool. It's like the McDLT of salads.
Okay.
And I have had the burgers too. So. You know it. That's what we're here for.
Adventurous. Crazy adventure.
That's what we're here for. Mm-hmm.
What was it? The hot side hot and the cool side cool?
Yeah, the McDLT of salads.
It's a salad. If the lettuce is hot, there's a problem, John.
No doubt. I'm just saying that the chicken comes out warm. It's not just cold chicken, because some places will give you a chicken Caesar salad and the chicken will not be warm. The chicken will be matching the temperature of the rest of the salad. What the brew house does,
that's a bad place. I don't go to those places.
So, but what you have is a very warm sliced grilled chicken breast. And it's a pretty big portion too, and it is over the top of the Caesar salad. So you have both temperatures to impress your palate.
'Cause that's the bottom line. 'Cause Stone Cold said so.
Damn right. And
right,
we'll be back there on Monday.
Salad. Get something more adventurous, Jeremy.
You get your burgers and your tacos and things like that. But we will be back there Monday night.
Yes, we will be back there for soccer over there on Monday, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about on that as well. Maybe even some Nicholas Bentner updates.
Oh, we still need somebody to read the book for us.
Yes, if somebody can translate Danish to us to read us Nicholas Bentner's book, we would love to talk to you.
Michael Parkhurst, we need your help. High school update from Keith Filer this morning. Apparently, both Houston County teams, Houston County High School, the Bears, have been playing great lately. Ladies have won their last two by a combined 19-0, and Peanut already has 2 hat tricks. They have Saturday soccer in Griffin, Houston County.
Peanut? They have a player named Peanut?
Apparently so.
Well, wait a minute. Is Peanut on the boys' team or the girls' team?
I'm guessing it's the ladies' side, because that's where Keith was going in the previous sentence.
Got it. Okay, because I'm about to say Peanut could kind of go either way, I guess, as a nickname.
Lady Bears kick off at 4, and the men's team kicks off at 6 at Griffin Memorial Stadium, and they're chasing the JAG Cup final with Griffin. Okay. Griffin and Houston County going at it. And and we also, in another programming note, we will be at McIntosh on Tuesday for the girls' game against Lambert.
Yes. We will be broadcasting the girls' game. The boys' game has been rescheduled for Lambert and McIntosh. But we'll be broadcasting the girls' game Tuesday. Is that 5:30 or 6?
I believe it is 5:30.
There you go.
So Jessica Charman and I will be down on the Southern Crescent giving you Lambert and McIntosh. Looking forward to seeing everybody down there.
Yes.
Ricky Ricardo on the CBA says that he can't listen live this morning, but he thinks the best part of the CBA that he's most excited for is the U22 player initiative. Being able to take more chances on young talent with a softer cap hit will allow for even more young, sellable talent to flow through MLS.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely creating the opportunity to grow the revenues from future transfers. That's why I love that U22 initiative, because you can make the league better, but you can also make more money at the end of the day with it. And you want to do both. And I think you need to do both. So love all of it with that aspect, and I want to see the final details of it.
A Pitiful has a pronunciation question this morning.
Uh-oh.
Says he's down with Mateus Hosseto, but another sneaky, with a question mark, pronunciation problem. Does Fernando say Meza or Meza?
I have not spoken with him. I believe, from all I have seen, I don't think it's any different. I think it's Meza. Now I'm
follow-up
concerned about it, but I'm just about positive it's Meza.
Okay. And a follow-up question about the roster from I Pity the Fool. Can you talk about what Mo Adams brings to the table? Apart from about 45 minutes and one early goal at LAFC last year, I think I only saw him as a late sub a few times. Is he Remedi/Larry's backup/competition at CDM? How does he fit the flexible player profile the team seems to prioritize?
He's not quite as flexible. He's definitely more of the central defensive midfielder, the CDM, if you play games that use that terminology, the number 6, which is usually where I go with it. He's much more defensive of them. And I would actually say that you're underselling him a little bit in what you saw of him last year, because Frank de Boer used him late in matches to close things out. It wasn't just a late game sub just to make a sub. He was brought in to shut things down. There was a specific role there. I think he's valuable because he's the most defensive of the options in the central midfield. Lorenowitz is a little different in that regard. He can get forward a little bit more. I think Mo Adams is most comfortable sitting and defending and might be the best 1v1 defender of the central midfielders. I don't think you see him start 30 games. I don't think you see him start 20, but I think he ends up being a pretty valuable part of this team, and there will be games that he, I think, can start and be very effective in.
Waffle House United at FC_Waffle.
Hello, Waffle.
Hello, Waffle. Scattered, smothered, covered, chunked, and topped. Triple order hash browns.
It's way too
Grilled
much.
cheese wheat on 2. Do you think that the new CBA agreement ushers in MLS 4.0? Also, with the increase in spending and the value of clubs going up, which club do you think would be sold to new ownership or moved?
I don't know what MLS 4.0 is yet, so I don't know if this ushers it in. I don't know what the defined change is. MLS 1.0 was getting off the ground. MLS 2.0 to me was maturing. So it was Toronto, it was the Cascadia teams coming in. MLS 3.0 for me was Atlanta saying that, okay, now the limiter is off. You can be a team that draws 70,000 people. You can be a team that competes for top players from South American leagues. And if you spend money and you treat it like a big deal, it will be seen as a big deal. It felt like a growth in that way. 4.0, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's winning CONCACAF Champions League, if it's as simple as that, and becoming a dominant league in this hemisphere. Maybe. Does this help with that? Yeah, I think it does. Is it being a league that brings in, hundreds of millions of dollars across the league every year in transfer sales? Maybe. I mean, that's part of growth. I don't know if that's what truly defines MLS 4.0. I kind of lean more to becoming that dominant league in this hemisphere. That, to me, would be 4.0 right now as we look at it. Sometimes you don't know what that thing is, because I don't think people knew Atlanta was going to be 3.0 and what exactly 3.0 was going to be. We might not know what 4.0 is yet. We might know when it smacks us in the face. Right now, my guess would be becoming the best league in this hemisphere. And I'm going to include South America in it. Brazil will be a tough one to jump ahead of. Argentina at the top will be a tough one to jump ahead of. I would go that big. You could maybe just say in CONCACAF, I think Liga MX is closer than some do. I think it's closer. I think the league's got to get over the hump in competition. So I would lean to that, and I would say, yeah, I think the CBA pushes you closer to that. I think the U22 initiative gives you the opportunity to make your rosters better to compete in CONCACAF. What owners, what teams are most likely to sell as the league grows? I think there's different reasons behind it, but I wouldn't be blown away if Red Bull sold, and I don't think it's because they can't spend in this league. I think it's just because they haven't seen as much of a return in their investment, and they're not really putting a whole lot into it at the moment. And they might be happy with that. I don't know. But it doesn't look like they're all that engaged in growing their product. So if they sold, they could spend more if they wanted to. I just think they choose not to, or they spend in other parts of the Red Bull soccer empire. Philadelphia is one that's come up a lot, and I do think they have fewer resources than some other clubs, so they wouldn't be a massive surprise, and it's a great market, so you could see somebody coming in there and doing more with it.
Vancouver?
Why, though?
I'm just looking at level of investment currently, and
they've invested. Why do you say they haven't invested? Like, that's what I'm saying. There's a difference between being bad and investing badly and not investing. I don't think Vancouver's a cheap ownership group at all. I don't get that impression. I don't think, and I think the more important thing here is not even so much are they cheap, is can they spend more? Like Philadelphia, I think there's limitations in how much they can truly spend and be comfortable. They need to bring in more money to do that. Other ownership groups can spend the money first and make more money later. Toronto, for example. I think Vancouver's fine. Then you get your Colorados and your Red Bulls, who the ownership has the money. They haven't had to spend it. Well, now they're going to have to spend more. They can do that. There comes a possibility where they make a choice not to, because they feel like they can't see the same return for the spend that they could in other areas of their businesses. And then there's clubs like Philadelphia that I think just, you get into a point where, can you spend more? Can you really spend more? And I don't know if Philadelphia can. I don't know how much more they can.
Right.
I'm trying to think of who else is in that boat. And there's not many. That's a good place to be. I mean, is Real Salt Lake going to spend as much as Toronto? No, it's a different market.
Yeah.
They're not going to make as much, so they're not going to spend as much. But this U22 initiative, for example, if they take full advantage of it and bring in players and then sell them, well, then maybe they start spending more on a different scale, but they could spend more, and they're very comfortable. So it's going to be down to, you look at the teams that are losing a lot in terms of those Forbes projections, they can afford to. The teams that can't afford to aren't losing big money because they're running their businesses in a pretty responsible way. Now, can they keep up? That's a more difficult question to answer. And Philadelphia is the number one in that category to me. Could a Red Bull decide, you know what, we don't need to spend it here, we're going to go spend it in Brazil, we're going to go do that somewhere else? They could, and they could sell, and that would be a valuable one to sell. Colorado could Kroenke say, you know what, it's just not a passion for me, like, I'm not going to see the same return. I could spend soccer money at Arsenal and get more of a return for it. Yeah, and I think Colorado would find a buyer and be just fine. I don't think there's anything bad about this conversation. I don't think they're going to have a problem finding potential owners. I don't think there's a huge number of owners who can't spend more. I think some haven't had to, and now they're going to have to, and hopefully they take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them that others have shown them, like Atlanta.
Fester has an AM question.
Hello, Fester.
Please enlighten me. The new CBA is said to, quote, convert TAM to GAM, end quote, yet there are still TAM targets in the neighborhood of $2 million a year by year over the next 5 years. If all TAM has been converted, why are there TAM targets in the new CBA?
All TAM has not been converted. Non-discretionary TAM. Remember, you had two types of TAM. You had TAM that the league gave you and said, here, go spend it. It expires on this date. And you had discretionary TAM that came a couple of years ago, I think. I mean, it was one of the later additions in the TAM universe. But discretionary TAM, owners could spend what they wanted to, up to $2.8 million. That still exists. So what they've done is take the TAM that the league handed you and said, it's not TAM anymore, it's GAM. You can do whatever you want with it. And that in turn increases the salary cap. Then they allowed the discretionary TAM to continue, although they're going to decrease it. So you can still use that if owners want to, but owners don't have to. That's an optional TAM. And that's all TAM is anymore now. It's only optional. There is no mandatory TAM. That's the difference.
Sean Vergara with a philosophical question this morning.
Uh-oh.
He says, what's the protocol to handle the haters on Twitter? Why do some continue to avoid reality? Soccer's a major sport.
Oh, man, I wish I knew the protocol to handle haters. I wish I did. Look, I think sometimes the air quotes haters are looking for attention, and I really try to always choose not to give it to them. And that's hard sometimes. Look, you get emotional about it. You see somebody say something stupid and attack something that you care about. You want to fire back. That's Twitter.
Yep.
And almost always firing back at somebody on Twitter is not going to lead to anything good. So, in general, don't do that. Sometimes things have to be addressed, and it does happen. And I think the best way to address them is by, one, not giving people that are looking for attention the attention that they deserve, which is not adding them and not responding to them, not giving them the engagement that they're looking for. But, again, sometimes things do have to be addressed. I think the way you make people understand that soccer is a major sport and it's growing and thriving, especially in Atlanta, is to point out the positives and post the positives and retweet the positives and put those things out into the universe, as opposed to anger, rah, 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 this
rabble,
is dumb,
rabble, rabble.
and name calling. And I mean, that doesn't accomplish anything. I think there's better ways to deal with it. Has it gotten better? Yeah, absolutely. But are there still people who are holding out for whatever reason, whatever personal biases, whatever professional biases they have, whatever other reasons? I don't know, maybe a soccer player stole their high school girlfriend. Who knows? Whatever the reason, there are always going to be those people. Just like, and they're quieter because they can't get away with it in the same way, but there's people who don't like baseball. There's people who don't like basketball. There's people who don't like football, believe it or not. They happen. There's people who don't like hockey. But they don't feel the, I guess, welcoming
visceral
nature.
Yeah.
It's just they don't feel like they can get away with being that guy. Like, they're not going to go on a rampage. The ones who do look completely like crackpots. When it's like, I hate basketball, and this is why. And meanwhile, the NBA is huge and kind of can't deny that.
No.
But people who don't like soccer will go down that road because probably somebody that they knew did that, or they read somebody who did that, or 20 years ago somebody did that, and it's accepted. And what's funny is when the insults become the same things that were said 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it's just like, you're not paying attention. You're making a fool of yourself. I'm not going to be part of this. You go make a fool of yourself over there and do your thing. I'm going to, when I see stuff like that, what I try to do, and yes, I know that I posted a tweet that commented indirectly on this, and that was by design, because I did not want to give people clicks and tweets and responses to bolster any kind of engagement number. That was by design. But I try, when I see this stuff, to then retweet more articles about attendance, about growth, about people being excited about the game, about all the different people who have said to me that they never followed soccer, they never had exposure to soccer before Atlanta United existed. And now they're listening to our show, or they're listening to every game, or they're watching every game, and they're talking about TAM and GAM and designated players.
High school. They're talking high school soccer now.
All of it. I mean, that's a little different. I'm talking about being completely engaged in the soccer community. High school soccer's been there. It's growing. It's growing more now because of this, but it's been there. For a lot of people, that was it. I'm talking about people who are doing this. I'm talking about people who are listening to this. I'm talking about people who are doing depth charts for Atlanta United. People who are coming up with lists of players that they should be going to get around the league, around the world. People who are subscribing to Fanatis to watch games from Argentina. That stuff. That stuff. The fact that you've got flags and banners and bumper stickers and all that everywhere for this team in this city. The fact that Birmingham's got a sold-out crowd. The fact that Birmingham is packed for tomorrow for a friendly. The fact that Nashville's opening the upper deck for the 29th. Those things cannot be denied. You can stick your head in the sand, but they cannot be denied. That's what's important. Not somebody saying something dumb on Twitter and feeling like you've got to give them a click or a response. John, what are you throwing your phone around?
I hope not.
Okay.
I hope
please
not.
don't. That's how I try to handle it. Sometimes I know people lose their cool and you tweet something that you wish you didn't, or you respond to somebody that you know you shouldn't. If you look at the people who have driven the most recent of these things, you can look at things that would probably lead them to do that, whether they are ratings, whether they are readership, whether they are competition in their space, and you can start to figure out why that might be the case. So, smile and nod, move on, address it in a different way, address it indirectly. That's what I try to do. There's no perfect way to do it, but getting into an argument with somebody who doesn't get it usually doesn't accomplish anything. I believe it was Mark Twain that Jay-Z paraphrased in a lyric that said, oh man, now I can't remember the line. Basically, don't argue with idiots because from a distance people can't tell who is who. John, mute your phone and unmute it. I don't know what's going on with John's phone. It's attacking us.
I don't either.
It's still attacking us.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. You hold on for a second. All right. Don't argue with people who don't get it and don't want to get it, because you're not going to get anywhere. And that's what they want. That's what I would say. And I know you feel like sometimes if you're defending soccer, you have to argue or you have to make your point. I get it. It doesn't ever accomplish anything. It doesn't ever change it. It doesn't ever change their opinion. It just brings more people into the argument. And again, people can't tell from the outside who's making sense and who isn't. So don't waste your time. Just point out all the positive things about the growth of it, things you like. You're always going to attract more and get more people to like what you like by extolling the positives rather than saying people are dumb for not liking what you like. That never accomplishes anything. That's my philosophy on it anyway. All right, John, let's try your phone again.
It's a little tough for me to avoid the verbal jousting, but I'm getting better at it.
You have to, because it does not accomplish anything. You're not going to change that opinion, because that opinion is either formed by professional bias, personal bias that is probably years and years and years in the making. And if they're still fighting it at this point, it ain't happening. Where things get better with it is there are fewer people like that, which you're not going to change by one argument, or their influence diminishes, and that is obviously happening. If you look at the people who have led this charge as of late, their influence sure isn't what it used to be. So just keep rolling along. And arguing with these people doesn't change anything. It just wastes your time.
Lewis Martin says he knows the NBA's promoted players over the game since the 1980s. If all fan bases knew their players like Atlanta United do, it would be great for the league.
Go one more time on that. I want to make sure I've got this right.
Lewis says, I know the NBA has promoted players over the game since the 1980s. If all fan bases knew their players like Atlanta United do, it would be great for the league.
Yeah, but the NBA found some problems at times when those superstars went away. And, I mean, I remember growing up in the golden age of Bird and Magic and Dominique and then Jordan. And then when those names started to go away and retire, it slowed down a bit. And they started to focus back on the teams. I think in the soccer world, players come and go faster. So it's a little bit harder to do that. I think Atlanta United does a really good job of the balance because you get to know these players via social media, via what the team puts out, but it is still about the team and the badge. And this offseason's been a prime example of how difficult that balance can be sometimes. So I think you have to find both, but you have to keep the team central to the way you promote things. You have to. If you don't, you run the risk of, okay, that player leaves, then what do you have to fall back on? And I think some NBA teams have had that issue and maybe haven't ever gotten past it. I mean, the Chicago Bulls for a long time had that issue when Jordan left. And it's understandable. You're talking about, one of the all-time greats. It's hard when that player goes away. But I'm talking more like an all-star player goes away. And some teams were so focused on being about that all-star, what do they have when that player goes? The Denver Nuggets, for example, when Carmelo Anthony left. I mean, what did they have to fall back on? The Timberwolves when Kevin Garnett left. That stuff, you got to balance. So that's what can be hard. You just got to find both, and you got to promote the team on top of it. But getting to know the people makes it emotional for fans. So you've got to do both. But it's hard to let one become more important than the other. And if one has to be more important, it's got to be the team first.
The Colonel says it looks like Legion wears dark kits at home. And he wants to know if that means Atlanta United is going to be in their Kings kit tomorrow. He says #Friday before Saturday.
They could. I don't know. That's probably part of the discussion with setting the game up. I don't know if they want to debut the Kings kit in a league match, in a CONCACAF match, or if they want to do it here. I don't know. I don't know what the branding plan is because it's preseason. I mean, Birmingham could wear their alternate kit at home for this because it's a preseason game. And that would probably be just part of the discussion over all the terms when you're creating the match. So I'm really not sure.
Taka has amended his Atlanta United kit grade.
Okay.
He says, amended, seen much better photos. It's upgraded a full half point from an 8.2 to an 8.7.
Well, that's good.
Four-Card Ahmed wants to know about streaming for tomorrow.
Birmingham is the home team. They're supposed to have a stream, and I mean, they're not supposed to have to by a contract. I think they're supposed to have a stream. That's what I've heard for all along. So be on the lookout. I haven't seen an official announcement from them, so I don't know, but I know it has been talked about, and I know it's been worked on, so I think it's going to happen.
Old Swarthy's in this morning. Yes. And the radio coverage plans are, sir?
4 o'clock is the Five Stripes countdown. 4:30 Eastern time is kickoff, and full-time report for an hour after the final whistle.
Old Swarthy this morning says, I hate to say it, but paying the current players more doesn't really, quote, improve the product, end quote, as much as paying new guys more if they're better.
That's 100% true. And that's the balance that the league pushes for. The Players Association wants their existing players to make more money, and that's understandable. I get it. You need both, but yeah, to improve the league, you've got to keep developing your current talent, but you're going to get a faster return by going out and getting external talent and bringing it in. You're still at that point, and I think you'll be at that point for a while, and that's okay. But you're going to have that ability to go out and spend and bring players in for sure.
Also this morning, let's see, Shiva has come in. She's got a couple of thoughts. And she says, based on the new CBA, what type of moves do you see Atlanta going for in 2020?
I don't know. I don't know if they're going to go for anything else right now because their roster's in pretty good shape. Frank DeBoer said the idea of a player on the right side, a winger, a more attacking player, is something they're looking for. Well, they've got more flexibility to go do that now. I would not be surprised if Atlanta tries to hold an option on bringing a bigger name in the summer. And not name in terms of somebody you know because they play at Real Madrid. I'm talking like a bigger player, a more impactful player that could come in the summer because there could be more of those players available. You don't have to force it right now. But if they go get a right winger to fill out that position that Frank wants them to add, you've got the flexibility to do it. You've got all kinds of flexibility to do it, and you can go as big as you want with it. I don't think you go crazy big because I don't know where the minutes would be for that player. I think you're looking for a player to supplement, a player to be part of the mix and play some, but if you're playing in a 3-4-3, there's nowhere for that player to play. You're not displacing Barco, Pitti, Joseph. You're not displacing the right wing-back options of Brooks Lennon in a 3-4-3 unless you're adding another wing-back. But that's not what DeBoer said. He's talked about a winger. That player would become influential in a 4-3-3. And the team will probably play that some, but I don't know if that's going to be the primary option or not. Maybe it depends on the level of player that you're looking at here. Maybe it depends on the level of player that you can get. And maybe you want to wait to make sure you can get the most high-level player you can, and that would be in the summer now. So I don't expect a big move now, but I would expect some flexibility to be retained for a summer move if the right move materializes.
You wanted to know what folks were classifying as exciting or what took excitement away.
Yeah, and that's going to be a different answer for everybody. Nobody's going to be able to define that for the whole group.
Right. And Greg Rodon came in with his answer. He said, For me, the loss of Almiron took some excitement away. He was just fun to watch with his speed.
Oh, 100%. And that's a very unique thing. You know, there's not many players like that, period. Like, he's a unique guy, and he's a unique player, and Tata used him in kind of a unique way. That's why I think it was a little difficult for him at Newcastle at first, because they didn't use him in that way, and I don't think they really knew how to use him. Because he's not a traditional attacking player. So, absolutely, he was a very exciting player to watch because of what he brought to the table. I compared him, and don't read anything into this, I compared him to Michael Vick because of his speed. Because it was game-breaking speed. And the type of speed that created a buzz in a stadium. The buzz when Almiron would pick the ball up at midfield and had space in front of him was very similar to when Vic would break the pocket and start off on a run. Those are two of the most exciting things I've experienced in a sporting venue ever. So, and they're both unique. Like, that stuff just doesn't happen on a regular basis. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. You know, that was a different type of excitement. Last year, you didn't have that option, because not many teams do. So you had to do things a little differently, and if that was what you wanted specifically in terms of excitement, that's going to be a hard thing to replace.
Chris Hutchison, on your NBA discussion about the superstars and all that stuff, Chris Hutchison says that Atlanta United's succession planning, in quotation marks, helps us to avoid those sorts of major collapses after the departures of superstars.
Yeah, and I wasn't even so much going collapses in terms of on court production. I was talking more in terms of stature of the team, which goes hand in hand, but I was looking at it more from popularity. Where teams in the NBA, I think for a while, they put superstar over team in terms of the way they promoted the league. And that bit them a little bit when there was a dip in the superstars that were being produced. And you had probably if not a once-in-a-lifetime group of players, pretty close in the 80s. And it's been hard to do that again. That happens sometimes. Sometimes you don't know that will happen until it doesn't happen for 10, 20, 30 years. I think MLS needs to be careful not to put it just on superstars. You have to promote your stars, but if you're promoting it at the expense of your clubs, it could hurt you when you have a dip in those superstars, when you have a dip in that talent or a dip in the superstars that connect with the audience.
Last comment on the board this morning comes from Frank Marrow. He says, I found it's more productive to bang my head against a concrete wall than to try to understand the MLS compensation rules. That's what happens when you put an attorney in charge of negotiations. They think they're being clever by making this ridiculously complicated.
I think it's better. I really think it's a lot better than it was. Let me try to drill down why it's better. You don't have TAM complicating that side of it as much. Now GAM is straight up cap space. And you have essentially, when you look at your salary cap, you have a cap and you have tradable cap space. That's called GAM. Cool. That part's easier. You don't have TAM making it more complicated there. You do have discretionary TAM, but that's in the category now with designated player spending and with potentially this U22 spending. So TAM has become completely up to the owner on if they want to spend it or not. And top teams will, because it can give you an advantage. You absolutely should. So it's gotten better in some ways. The free agency is better. Is it a little more clear? Yeah, I think so. It's easy to know how you qualify, and more players will qualify. You're not limited to how many signings you can make. The raises have gone up a little bit, but there is a raise cap for free agent players. The designated player part of free agency is a little more easier now to define, although there's still a lot of definition to it. It's better, but I'd have to compare it, and I'd have to do the research on the NBA cap and roster rules compared to the NFL, compared to Major League Baseball. I don't know if it's more complicated now than the others. If it is, I don't think it's by much. The NBA one, I can start to wrap my head around, but man, there's so many little things in it. Like these mid-level exceptions and
veteran exceptions, one-times, has to be within 10% of the full compensation when you're dealing with player transactions. The NBA, for me, is the one far and away that's the more confusing.
But it's at least out there for people to understand.
Right.
And that was the thing is, okay, I couldn't sit there and say, well, man, the Hawks need to trade for a mid-level exception and then they can do that. Like, no, I got nothing. But there are people who can tell you, like, okay, they made these moves. This is what they have left. This is what they have. This is what they need. Okay, cool. And it can be explained. Great. I don't need to know it, but there are people who do. That's good. I think MLS needs to continue to get to that point. If it's still complicated, and when the lawyers get involved, it's going to be complicated. Sorry, our lawyer friends. I know you're going to throw things at me. It's okay. When it's going to get complicated because you're getting into the negotiation, you're getting into the back and forth, you're finding compromises. I get it. But it needs to be more transparent. It is more transparent now than it used to be. It needs to continue to be more transparent. So when we go into an off season, we know how much cap space a team has. We know what they're not using in GAM. When they trade for more, when they trade some away, we know what it all means. That would be so helpful, and it would allow you, the end of the season, to really debate. This team has X amount of money. They need to go get a right winger. They need to go get a left back. They need to go get this. This is the one they need to spend more on. This is how much they have to work with. These are the players they could fit. Because that's what happens with the NBA. And I think it's helped the NBA discussion. The NFL, you can pretty much nail it down in terms of like slotting and all that of where you can go get better, where you can't go get better. You can't really do that here enough yet. It's better, but it needs to continue to get more transparent.
when NBA has their free agency day, I mean, you have offers out of the blocks right at, midnight, and you have people who can track this, and you have constant conversation about it and who needs what and what they can do. And same with the NFL when you have that. But it's because the transparency is there with cap space, numbers, contracts, who can do what, for how long, how he fits, all these kinds of things, how he fits into the financial structure. And you don't have that transparency with MLS. You're still kind of guessing as to how things can fit with players.
Yeah, it's just easier to follow, and it's easier to plan and project, and this league would benefit from that.
One more before we go.
Okay.
Unite Chopper Eyes has come in and says, it really pisses me off the way we lose half of our starters during Olympic and Liga breaks. I don't get how you're supposed to be competitive. Good teams get punished by losing their best players. Then you have guys like Vela turn it down and get quote-unquote records.
Well, they got a real record. You can't say that because Joseph did turn down Venezuelan call-ups. Now, not in the year that he broke the record, but he turned them down for a while, so... That you can't control if players are going to turn stuff down or not. There's nothing you can do about that. That's what happens. The Olympics is an issue for every league in the world because it's outside of the FIFA windows, and you don't create FIFA windows for it. So everybody struggles with the Olympics, and it's once every 4 years. My issue's more around the league deciding to play through major international competitions like the Gold Cup, like the European Championships, like the Copa America, like the World Cup, to play through the whole thing. Now, they take a break during the group stage sometimes. This year it's a 2-week break. It's a small one. At least Atlanta's got a 2-week break. It needs to be more. And I know it's hard because of the schedule. I understand. I understand that it is difficult because of the way MLS has done their schedule. This is why I did not like them moving MLS Cup up, because it condensed it even more, and it makes it almost impossible to take a longer summer break during these competitions and to make sure every team does not play during international breaks. Teams have the option to do that now. It shouldn't be an option. International break, the league should be off. Period. But if you're going to have MLS Cup where you have it in the calendar now, you can't do that. You can't do that. Part of this is the 2022 World Cup. And if this is the trade-off, we got to suffer for 3 more seasons. And then they move MLS Cup back to where it was. I mean, Mexico got along just fine, and I know climate is different, but Mexico got along fine with the final being after Christmas. Now, that was not by design. It was supposed to be a couple weeks before that, but they handled it okay. And the ratings were pretty freaking good, so maybe that's something you should look at. But have MLS Cup back where it was. The first or second week, I think it's almost always going to be the second weekend in December after the college conference championship games. Put it back into that slot. You can do if you want to do the playoffs in the same way, you can start them after that November international break. So you move it back a month essentially. You have the October international break, and then the playoffs start right now. So you play all the way up to the last weekend before the November international break. You take that off, you come back, and you do the playoff format like it is, and you play MLS Cup the second week of December. That gives you more space, gives you a month to work with. You can, instead of taking 2 weeks off for a summer competition, you can take 4 off. You can take the month off. Yes, it's a month off in the middle of the season. It's the summer break. Teams can recharge. Teams can go take a training camp. There's lots of things you can do with that. But then you don't have players missing as much. The Olympics are always going to be weird. I'm going to push that to the side. But those summer competitions plus regular scheduled international breaks, the league needs to avoid them. They need to avoid them. And they can't do it with MLS Cup being where it is in the calendar. Because you can only start so much earlier. I think they could probably start a couple weeks earlier, but anything more than that's really pushing it. So there's not any room at the front. The room is going back to where it was before at the back end. Adding that month back. Do it that way. I think that would work. I think that would be the smartest thing they can do. And if they got to wait till after the 2022 World Cup, then that just is what it is, thanks to FIFA.
I'm still trying to find the Jay-Z Mark Twain reference.
Oh, I got it. It's a wise man told me don't argue with fools because people from a distance can't tell who is who. That's the quote.
Okay.
So don't argue with fools because people walk in and see two people arguing and they think you're both fools.
All right.
I think it
well,
was
we're caught up on Twitter.
Mark Twain quote.
Yes. We're caught up on Twitter. Was there anything you wanted to hit before we left?
U.S. women tonight. Canada and Costa Rica tonight as well. Let me get your times and channels for you. 7 o'clock on 2Day NA on Fox Soccer Plus for Canada and Costa Rica. 10 o'clock FS1 because it's out in California. It's also on Galavisión, USA, Mexico. The winners go to the Olympics. The losers don't. It's that simple. So Canada and the U.S. are the overwhelming favorites. They should take care of business. Both can potentially be tested in these matches. So 7 and 10, U.S. and Mexico at 10 o'clock. We'll have Crumpets and Espresso later today for you to preview the weekend around the world. A lot of England, a lot of Serie A. We'll get into what's going on in Argentina. We'll get into what's going on in some other parts of the world as well. Other bits of news, updates, etc., etc. Seattle finally signed the center back they had been working on, Yemar Gomez Andrade. It's done. It's a TAM signing. For now, it might be a GAM signing by this point. I don't know. But they got 3 center backs now on their roster. So, yay, Seattle. Adama Diomande is going to miss time, and maybe a good bit of time, with a broken right foot. And that happened against New York City last week. 4th metatarsal fracture. He'll be back for the bulk of the season, but he could miss CONCACAF Champions League. I would say he's probably most likely to miss CONCACAF Champions League. Giuseppe Rossi's still in camp for Real Salt Lake. They want him to get fit. They want him to get fit first before they make a decision on if they're going to offer him a contract or not. And that's the right way to do it. And if they've got the ability to do that, cool. Then they can really take a true look at him once he gets fit. I mean, he's 33 years old. He hasn't played since 2018. You got to let him get up to speed. The New York City match at Red Bull Arena, NYCFC CEO Brad Sims said a deal was not done just yet. Everything else he said pointed to a deal being done, just not actually signed yet. He made it kind of clear that, look, we can't say anything yet because the contract's not done and we're not trying to break news for you. Sorry, that's not our role, which is absolutely true. If the contract's not signed, then no, they can't talk about it. I don't know why the contract's not signed at this point because that game is coming up in less than a month. But anyway, I did mention that it's been very difficult in getting this sorted out with a venue that is in the 5 boroughs and also met CONCACAF's approval. They thought they had it multiple times and it didn't happen. That article's over at newsday.com if you are looking for more with Brad Sims and NYC. Justin Merrim, according to Jeff Carlisle, is most likely to end up with Real Salt Lake. Said most of the terms have been agreed to. So, that's it.
Sounds like a week.
That's a lot, and there will be more today. We'll be talking about that U.S. women's match tonight. 10 o'clock, FS1, Galavisión in Spanish. They should handle it. They've looked really good in this tournament so far. I think Mexico can push them, but I think ultimately over the 90 they'll be okay. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a 1-goal lead or so at halftime, if it's a little bit tight through 45 and then the U.S. pulls away in the second half. But we will see. That's it. thank you for all the tweets. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for everything this week. We appreciate it. Be on the lookout for Crumpets and Espresso later this afternoon. And we'll be on the call tomorrow, 4 o'clock, Five Stripes Countdown on 92.9 The Game on the radio.com app. And if you're driving back to Atlanta from Birmingham, throw on the app and listen to the full-time report after the game. Until then, mucha plata, y'all.
Much plata.